Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The sun beat down hot on the roof of the rusty pickup truck as it rattled down the dirt road. Plumes of dust kicked up behind its wheels, carrying off into the dry summer air. After nearly an hour, the truck came to a stop in a small clearing at the edge of the forest. Greg killed the engine and hopped out, surveying the campsite. "Looks like this is the spot, boys." His three best friends, Nate, Owen, and Kyle, piled out of the truck after him, stretching their stiff limbs. They had been planning this camping trip for weeks, looking to get away from the stress of work and city life for a few days. The mysterious dark pine forest seemed like the perfect destination to really unplug and get back to nature.
"Man, smell that fresh air,"
Kyle proclaimed, grinning like a little kid.
"We should try to make this an annual thing. Real male bonding time out in the wilderness."
Nate snorted as he hauled a cooler out of the truck bed.
"Just don't go all caveman on us, all right, Kyle? I'd like to return to civilization with all my limbs still attached." "I make no promises," Kyle quipped back. "Instinct might just take over once we're out here fending for ourselves against the elements." "Let's focus on getting the tent set up first before anyone goes feral,"
Owen interjected diplomatically, always the voice of reason.
"Greg and I will tackle that if you two want to gather some firewood for later."
With marching orders distributed, the four friends set about making camp. It took a bit of fumbling and slightly heated debate, but after about 30 minutes, 2 tents were erected and standing, mostly, straight. Owen wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead.
"Not bad for city slickers, I'd say. The firewood looks great, too. Nice work, guys." "And I found something else you're going to want to see,"
Kyle called out, jogging over with Nate right behind. In Kyle's hand was a jagged metallic object, its surface glistening yellow in the afternoon sun. Greg squinted at it curiously.
"Is that gold?
Out here?"
"Sure looks like it,"
Kyle beamed, holding up the artifact triumphantly.
"I knew there was something special about these woods. We're going to be rich, boys." "Whoa, slow down," Owen cautioned. "We have no idea what that thing really is. For all we know, it could be some kind of ancient cursed relic. This forest does have a mysterious reputation."
Nate rolled his eyes.
"Always the rational buzzkill. Come on, what's the harm in dreaming? Even if it's not real gold, Kyle finding it has to be a sign this trip was meant to be."
The guys passed the artifact around, each one imagining what they could do with their share of theoretical relic riches. By the time they finished setting up the rest of the campsite, the sun was already starting to sink below the treetops, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds.
"I'm beat,"
Greg declared through a yawn.
"All that fresh air really takes it out of you. What do you say we hunker down and rest up for tomorrow?"
The others readily agreed. Owen carefully stowed the strange artifact in the supply tent before they all crawled into their sleeping bags. Within minutes, the gentle chirping of crickets and hooting of owls had lulled the four friends into a deep, heavy slumber. Morning came far too soon. Greg blinked his bleary eyes open with a groan. Something felt off. His center of gravity seemed to have shifted lower, and there was an unfamiliar weight on his chest. Confused, he glanced down to an astounding sight, his chest straining against his t-shirt. He let out a yelp and shot upright, hands flying to his chest in disbelief. This had to still be a dream, right? But the soft flesh beneath his palms felt undeniably real. In a panic, Greg stumbled out of the tent and stopped short. 3 young women in oversized men's clothing were standing in a cluster, gaping at each other in total shock. A curvy redhead, a slim blonde, and an athletic-looking brunette. They were definitely not the same 3 guys he had fallen asleep next to last night.
"What the hell?"
Greg shouted, hardly recognizing the higher-pitched voice that came out. The girls' heads all swiveled to stare at him. The redhead took a tentative step forward. "Greg?" she asked in disbelief. "Is that you?" "Kyle!" The name fell from Greg's lips as he put it together. If he was now in a woman's body, the same must have happened to his friends. He looked at the blonde and brunette. Nate! And Owen? Oh God, we've been turned into chicks! The blonde, Nate, exclaimed, clutching at her significantly longer hair. How is this possible? The brunette, Owen, muttered, looking down at her slender female hands in awe. It has to be that freaky artifact, Kyle declared, her voice shrill with alarm. I knew it was suspicious. This forest really is cursed. The four friends took turns frantically examining their new bodies, still trying to wrap their heads around the incomprehensible transformation. Instead of their former male physiques, each now possessed undeniably feminine curves and features. It defied all logic and reason. After several minutes of slack-jawed stupor, Owen snapped them out of it. Okay, everyone just stay calm, she urged, running a hand through her short brown hair. Having a meltdown won't do us any good right now. Let's put our brains together and try to figure this out rationally.
Rationally?
Nate sputtered, blue eyes wide.
There is nothing rational about magically turning into the opposite gender overnight. I'm so short and petite now. How is this my life? I think Owen's right, Greg said, trying to maintain some composure despite his racing heart. Panicking won't solve anything. The only lead we have is that weird artifact. We need to study it, see if there are any clues about how to reverse whatever the hell this is. He glanced down at his own foreign body again and gulped. Kyle nodded her new fiery red locks emphatically. Good plan. I'll go grab the stupid thing. She turned and hurried for the supply tent on unsteady legs, still adjusting to her altered weight distribution. While Kyle rummaged for the relic, the others awkwardly shifted on their feet, unsure what to do with themselves in these unfamiliar female forms. After a minute, Kyle reemerged, face pale. Guys, it's gone, she revealed in a shaky voice. The artifact isn't here. It must have disappeared just like our original bodies. Tense silence fell over the campsite as they absorbed this troubling development. Not only were they trapped inhabiting the wrong anatomy, but their only potential lead to reversing it had vanished into thin air. After a long moment, Nate huffed in exasperation. Great, so we're stuck like this? As women? No offense, but I didn't sign up for spontaneous gender reassignment when we planned this little excursion. None of us did, Owen said grimly, folding her arms across her newly ample chest. But flying off the handle won't get us back to normal any faster. For now, I think we need to focus on just surviving out here. New plumbing be damned. Kyle nodded somberly. Owen's right. Like it or not, these female bods are what we're working with indefinitely. We can't just sit around moping about our missing masculinity. There's shit that needs doing if we want to make it back home in one piece, girl parts and all. Greg looked at the determined expressions on his friends' soft, delicate faces and felt a flicker of strength return. Okay, you heard them. Ladies, he declared, trying to lighten the mood. Let's tackle this curveball like the badasses we still are underneath all this lady padding. We set out to conquer the wilderness, and by God, that's what we're gonna do. Hell yeah, Kyle crowed, pumping a dainty fist. Ain't no tits gonna hold us back. We're unstoppable no matter what's in our pants. That got a round of laughs, the tension broken momentarily by Kyle's over-the-top enthusiasm. Spirits slightly buoyed, the gang hesitantly set about adjusting to their new normal. Clothes were reappropriated to fit slimmer shoulders and wider hips. Names were temporarily tweaked to match outward appearances. I guess I'm Vicky now. My aunt's name is Vicky, Kyle had complained. Tasks were divvied up with clumsy movements, everyone still learning how to operate their revised hardware. Alora, formerly Owen, took on breakfast duty, reasoning that her background in chemistry gave her a knack for not burning food. As she awkwardly cracked eggs into a pan, her fingernails annoyingly long and manicured, Kyle, or rather Vicky, came over to help. Across the campsite, Cindy and Olivia, whose names used to be Nate and Greg respectively, struggled to adjust the tent stakes to properly accommodate their shorter statures and reduced upper body strength. Jesus, why do I feel like a T-Rex trying to do this? Cindy griped, her slender arms straining.
These tiny hands are useless, Cindy huffed, blowing a strand of long blonde hair out of her face. I'm just saying we couldn't have been zapped into some cute, sensible outfits to go with these ladybods. No, we get transformed in the middle of the night, Commando. Real considerate enchantment there. Hey, it can always be worse, Olivia pointed out, wiping sweat from her brow with a dainty hand. At least none of us got our periods from this whole switcheroo. Can you imagine dealing with that out here in the sticks? We'd never make it back alive. Cindy paled at the very thought. Oh God, bite your tongue, don't even utter it. No one is becoming bear food, Alora called out in her most maternal tone as she and Vicky approached with breakfast. Here, eat up. We need to keep our strength and wits about us if we're going to survive this predicament. The eggs were more than a little rubbery, but nobody had the heart or the guts in their new bodies to complain. They chewed in determined silence for a few minutes before Vicky spoke up. So, what's our game plan here? She asked hesitantly. I mean, we can't just live in these woods forever as chicks, right? Don't we need to try to find a way to change back? Olivia set down her bamboo camping plate with a sigh. Of course we do, Kyr Vicky. But we have to be smart about this. Charging around a cursed forest while we're still fumbling with foreign equipment is a recipe for disaster. I say we stick it out here a few days, master the basics of these bodies, then reassess. I agree with Olivia, Alora chimed in. Rushing into the unknown while we're discombobulated could get us lost, or worse. Let's use this time to adjust and formulate a solid strategy. Our goal has to be getting back to civilization in one piece first and foremost. Magical meddling be damned. Vicky and Cindy exchanged wary glances, but ultimately nodded their assent. As much as it grated to be benched in babe form, Alora's level-headed logic was hard to argue with. Slow and steady was the smart play, as emasculating as it felt. The day passed in a surreal haze of attempting to operate in their revised forms. Every basic task required extra thought and care. Don't take too large a stride or you'll topple with your new center of gravity. Make sure your lady lumps are secure before any sudden movements. Be mindful of how much strength you actually possess now. It was physical and mental whiplash. By the time night fell, everyone was sore and exhausted in ways they never experienced before. Wearily, they gathered around the now roaring campfire, gazes flickering between the mesmerizing flames and their alien bodies. As the mesmerizing campfire crackled and popped, the four friends sat in contemplative silence, each grappling with the enormity of their predicament. The day had been a whirlwind of adjusting to their new female forms, every simple task feeling like a Herculean effort. Exhaustion settled deep in their bones as the adrenaline of the initial shock wore off. Olivia, formerly Greg, stared down at her delicate hands in the flickering firelight. I never realized how much I took for granted, she mused quietly. Walking, talking, just existing in my own skin. It all feels so foreign now. Cindy, who used to be Nate, nodded solemnly. I keep waiting to wake up from this bizarre dream, but the ache in my back from these new fun bags is definitely real. She shifted uncomfortably, still not used to the weight on her chest. We'll figure this out, Alora reassured the group. Tomorrow we'll scour the woods for that artifact. There has to be a way to reverse this, and that's our best lead. Vicky sighed dramatically. I sure hope so. As much as I love a good prank, I'd like my body back sometime this century. That got a round of chuckles, the tension broken momentarily. They chatted a bit longer, trying to boost each other's spirits, before deciding to turn in. Sleep was a welcome respite from the constant reminders of their altered state. Morning arrived with a symphony of bird songs and sunlight filtering through the trees. Olivia cracked open her eyes and for a brief, blissful moment forgot her new reality. Then she stretched and felt the gentle tug of soft flesh on her chest. Right. Still a woman. She let out a resigned sigh. Slowly, the others began to stir and emerge from their tents, each looking rumpled and wary. They gathered around the remnants of the fire pit, staring at each other's unfamiliar faces. "So, artifact hunt?" Vicky prompted, running a hand through her long red hair. It was a habit she had often done as Kyle, but the sensation of thick, silky locks sliding through her fingers still caught her off guard. Alora nodded decisively. "Artifact hunt. Let's split up into pairs, cover more ground. Vicky, you're with me. Olivia and Cindy, you two stick together. We'll meet back here in 2 hours to regroup and re-strategize if needed." Everyone agreed to the plan, divvying up some basic supplies before heading out in opposite directions. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, dew clinging to the underbrush. If not for the whole waking up with the wrong genitals situation, it would have been a perfect day for a hike. Olivia and Cindy picked their way carefully through the dense foliage, eyes peeled for anything shimmering or out of place. It was increasingly difficult to focus, however, with their ill-fitting clothes and new jiggly parts. They commiserated over their wardrobe malfunctions for a bit before lapsing back into determined silence, scanning the forest floor. Time seemed to crawl by, marked only by the occasional chirp of birds and rustle of leaves. After what felt like hours, they hadn't made any progress. No mystical glint of metal, no conveniently placed relic on a stump. Irritation and worry began to gnaw at Olivia's gut. "What if we can't find it?" she asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been percolating in her mind. What if we're stuck like this?" Cindy paused, her pretty face pinched with concern. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we can't think like that. Not yet. We've only been at this a couple hours. The artifact didn't just disappear into thin air." "Didn't it, though?" Olivia countered, frustration leaking into her tone. "Vanished from the tent without a trace? For all we know, it could be on a different planet or something. And we're out here stumbling around in the wrong bodies." She hadn't realized how much her voice had risen until Cindy gripped her shoulders, giving her a little shake. Hey, breathe," the blonde urged. "I'm freaked out too, but we can't lose our heads. That's not going to help anything." Olivia closed her eyes and focused on steadying her breathing, trying to calm her galloping heart. Cindy was right. Melting down wouldn't solve their problems. After a few deep inhales and exhales, she opened her eyes. "You're right, I'm sorry," Olivia said sheepishly. "Guess I'm still adjusting to all these new hormones flooding my system. Talk about mood swings." Cindy cracked a wry smile. "Tell me about it. I nearly burst into tears this morning because I couldn't get my hair into a stupid ponytail. These chick emotions are no joke." "At least you didn't put your shirt on backwards and inside out," Olivia commiserated with a laugh. "I swear it's like I've never dressed myself before." They shared a rueful chuckle, the tension dissipating. With clearer heads, they resumed their search, chatting idly to pass the time. Olivia found herself surprisingly grateful for Cindy's easy company. If she was going to be stuck as a woman indefinitely, there were worse people to have by her side. Meanwhile, across the forest, Vicky and Alora were having their own set of struggles. Well, mostly Vicky. Alora seemed to be adjusting to her new form with maddening ease, moving through the woods with a grace Vicky envied. In contrast, Vicky felt like a baby deer learning to walk, all gangly limbs and poor coordination. "Ow! Son of a!" Vicky yelped as she accidentally whacked herself in the face with a tree branch. Again. She glowered at the offending foliage, rubbing her smarting nose. Alora glanced back with a sympathetic smile. "Careful, your center of gravity is lower now," she reminded gently. "Shorter limbs means a shorter reach, too." Vicky rolled her eyes. Yeah, I know. It's just hard to remember when I've spent my whole life with a different set of equipment. This female stuff is so dainty." She flexed her slender arm demonstratively. "We may be daintier, but we're not delicate," Alora pointed out. "Women are incredibly resilient. Just look at everything the female body can endure. Childbirth, menstruation, societal double standards. These forms are tougher than they look." I guess, Vicky allowed begrudgingly. She did have a newfound respect for what women dealt with on a daily basis. Multiple times that morning, she had caught herself automatically manspreading, only to wince at the unpleasant sensation of her new lady bits being smooshed. Walking was a whole other challenge, hips swaying without her permission. Alora, bless her, was endlessly patient with Vicky's grumbled complaints and physical fumbles. She offered tips and tricks she had already figured out, like how to adjust her gait and posture to minimize bouncing. Vicky never thought she'd miss jockstraps so much. It was almost like having an older sister showing her the ropes of womanhood. And there was a strange recalibration happening in Vicky's mind, too. She had always considered Owen one of her best bros. But now, as Alora, there was a new layer to their dynamic. A softness and intimacy Vicky wasn't used to with her male friends. She found herself wanting to confide in Alora, share these new experiences and vulnerabilities. It was nice. Different, but nice. They walked on in companionable silence for a while, eyes scanning the underbrush. A couple times Vicky thought she spotted a metallic glint, but it always turned out to be a trick of the light or a shiny pebble. As the 2-hour mark approached with no sign of the artifact, Vicky felt her spirits starting to flag. Maybe Olivia was right, she sighed, kicking a pine cone morosely. Maybe the damn thing really did just vanish into another dimension and we're screwed. Alora stopped and turned to face Vicky fully, her expression serious but kind. Hey, we're not screwed, okay? No matter what happens, we'll get through this together. We're still us, even if the packaging is different. She reached out and took Vicky's hands, giving them a comforting squeeze. Vicky was struck by how small and soft Alora's hands were now, but her grip was reassuringly strong. Familiar. I know it's a weird, but at the end of the day, we're still the same people inside. We're still friends who have each other's backs. Bodies are just bodies. Who we are in here, she tapped Vicky's forehead. That's what matters. Vicky swallowed against the sudden lump in her throat, emotions churning. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded and squeezed Alora's hands back. The moment was broken by a distant shout. Guys, over here! Vicky and Alora exchanged a startled glance. Was that Olivia? Vicky asked, pulse quickening. Sounded like it. Come on! They took off in the direction of their friends' voices, hurrying as fast as their awkward new gaits allowed. After a few minutes of crashing rather ungracefully through the brush, they burst into a small clearing. Olivia and Cindy were standing in the middle, staring at something on the ground. As Vicky and Alora got closer, they realized it was a considerable divot, like a miniature crater. Clumps of dirt and leaves were scattered around the edges, as if something had impacted the earth with significant force. What the? Vicky panted, hands braced on her now much narrower knees. Olivia glanced up, her expression grim. Look familiar? She pointed at the center of the depression. Alora and Vicky leaned in to peer at the spot. At first, it just looked like more upturned soil. But then a glint caught Vicky's eye and her stomach dropped. There, half buried in the dirt, was the unmistakable metallic sheen of the artifact. Holy, Vicky breathed. Is that? Yep, Cindy confirmed, looking equally stunned. Guess we found where it landed after it apparently yeeted itself out of our tent. Alora crouched down to get a closer look, careful not to touch the thing. It must have some kind of kinetic energy built up, she hypothesized. Maybe that's what caused it to fly off once it finished. Transforming us. Transformed. The word made Vicky's skin prickle. It was one thing to joke about being magically gender-swapped, but seeing the proof of it was something else entirely. So what do we do now? Olivia asked, breaking the heavy silence. If this thing is capable of rewriting our DNA or whatever, how do we even begin to reverse it? We don't, Alora said simply. 3 heads swiveled to gape at her. Come again? Vicky sputtered. Alora pushed to her feet, dusting off her hands. Think about it. We have no idea how this artifact works or how to control it. For all we know, messing with it further could turn us into toads. Or worse. Alora's right, Cindy chimed in, sounding pained. As much as I hate to admit it, we're in over our heads here. Trying to reverse engineer a magical gender change is way beyond our pay grade. Olivia raked a hand through her hair, exhaling heavily. So that's it then? We're just stuck like this? Forever? The question rang out in the clearing, met with leaden silence. Forever was a long time to contemplate. A whole lifetime in a foreign body, complete with societal baggage and biological functions they hadn't signed up for. But what choice did they have? Alora was right. They were way out of their depth. Attempting to wield this bizarre magic could have catastrophic consequences. Perhaps it was better to accept their new reality, no matter how daunting it seemed. They spent a few more minutes staring at the artifact in morbid fascination, the aching truth settling over them like a lead blanket. This wasn't some trippy dream or elaborate prank. This was their life now, for better or for worse. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.